Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Self-Healing Podcast by Dr. Olivia Pompa. I am Dr. Olivia Pompa, and I'm super excited to be starting this podcast with you guys. I really have such a desire and a purpose to reach my generation. So the 18-year-olds, the 20-year-olds, the 30-year-olds, the 40-year-olds even, that are looking for health answers and solutions. As you guys may know, my father is Dr. Daniel Pompa, and he is a renowned cellular detox doctor. The doctor of unexplainable illness is what they call him, and I have been so blessed to have been trained by him and to be carrying a lot of his information that he has taught me to my generation. And so I'm super excited to be starting this podcast. And today we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite topics. I think it's just fun. It's a right way to start this off. And it is how to stay healthy when we're traveling. I've been doing a lot of traveling recently back to Salt Lake City from Puerto Rico, which is where I actually live now. And I have to admit, flying from the Caribbean to the Midwest, there's no direct flights. So it's an all-day traveling affair. We know those days where you got to get on a connecting flight, either one or two of them, sit in the airport for 2 to 3 hours. And so lots of traveling lately. So it's been a little tough to stay healthy, but I want to teach you guys some of my favorite tricks whenever I do travel a lot, either in the airport and then whenever I get to where I'm going, right? It's really important to have these conversations of what to avoid, what is the better options when you are out, even eating at restaurants, right? There's an important conversation to have there because not everyone has access to healthy restaurants, right? I was living in California not long ago, a few months ago, finishing my chiropractic degree with Dr. Hank Williams at North Laguna Wellness Center. I was interning there, learning from the best, truly. But what I loved about California was the ability to get healthy food, right? It was so easy. And that's actually how I felt when I lived in Georgia. That's where I went to chiropractic school in Atlanta. And because we have such surrounding farmers, such an amount of them that are 100% grass-fed, they sell raw dairy, really good cheese, fermented foods, all organic vegetables, but local, right? Things that have just been picked the day before. It was easy, just like in California, it was easy for me to get these foods. But when I moved to Puerto Rico, I have to admit, it was much more difficult. So we want to talk about some of these things, when people don't have access to organic restaurants, when they don't have the ability to go eat out with some friends, but stay true to the philosophy that, hey, we want to live a non-toxic lifestyle so that we can live to our fullest, live an optimal health lifestyle, keep inflammation low, which is going to be something I'm going to be talking about, why we want to keep inflammation low in this podcast. So, let's continue to talk about it. Let's talk about how to stay healthy when we travel and when we get where we're going. What does it look like when a Pompa, right, my father included, my mother, my 5 siblings, what does it look like when we travel? So let's start with airport because I think that's the beginning, right? I always, if I'm going to be going on a long trip into the airport, I always bring lunch with me, right? And of course, you can't bring liquids, so I always do buy some type of sparkling water or filtered water in the airport or on the flight, right? They always give you good water. Of course, it's coming from plastic, but there's good, better, best. And in some situations when you're traveling, it's tough to get the best of the best, right? So if I have time, if time permits, I will try to pack myself a lunch for a long traveling day, especially if I know that I'm going to be on the airplane for maybe dinner. I am an avid faster, so I really love to skip breakfast, love to skip lunch typically, and just do one meal a day. So a lot of the times I'll take the opportunity whenever I do travel to just do one meal. But, dinner, half the time you're still on the airplane when dinner comes around. Of course, Delta serves food on the airplane, but I would never touch it. In fact, I've actually looked into their food on the airplane, and all of them have vegetable oil, sunflower, canola oil, all of it, right? Even if they're trying to serve a healthier option, which, oh my gosh, it's a fantastic topic. How to discern between something that's actually healthy and not. We'll be definitely touching on all of these topics, but, so I've checked, most of those foods on the airplanes, they're just not, they're made with cheap oils, right? I have to admit, the biggest thing that when you are traveling, the biggest thing to keep an eye on is oils. Okay, even if you decided to come out of ketosis or come out of your regular way of eating and do some higher carb when you're traveling, right? Maybe you're going to eat at some restaurants that have these homemade breads or homemade foods that are made with higher carb foods. Well, that's okay. But my biggest rule is always avoid vegetable and canola oil. So airplane food, not great. I have to admit, though, on Delta, they have such an array of snacks, right, that you can choose from. And one of the only snacks I've been able to find that they actually have that's somewhat okay is their little pistachio bags of pistachios. And they're the unshelled pistachios, but they are just roasted pistachios. And I think they put sea salt in there too, but there's no oil. So, of course, I've looked at all the snacks, even the Kind bars that they allow you to choose from on the airplane as well. I'm talking about Delta, by the way. The Kind bars have something in them. I think it was a bad oil. I'd have to go back on my next flight and peek at it, but I think it was bad oils. But there was only one snack, and it was the shelled pistachios that didn't have oil. So I have recently had a bag or two of those on the airplane, interestingly enough. But mostly I do like to pack a lunch if time permits, and I do have the ability to bring something that isn't liquid. So usually what I do, I always have Siete. You guys know the brand Siete. It's a fantastic grainless Mexican company. So they're all Mexican foods, but grainless. Granted, I do hope one day they can release an all-organic line, because right now Siete is not a certified organic company. They are non-GMO, so that is definitely a step in the right direction, meaning that they're not using genetically modified foods when they make these, but they're not certified organic. And one of the reasons for that is organic almond flour is extremely hard to actually even get. And so that's why I'm always in the habit of taking my product, Dr. Zach Bush's product, Ion, before I start my day in the mornings, 20 minutes before meals. That's super important for me. But back to my point, I always have those tortillas on hand, and before an airplane trip, I will grab maybe a pack or two. I eat a lot of meat. I'm a very carnivore, animal-based diet forward way of eating. I will grab 1 or 2 packs of organic turkey breast, like the little lunch meat ones. Now, we have to talk about some brands here, because even like Applegate and Whole Foods, their organic turkey breast has natural flavoring in it. We don't even know where that comes from, okay? I actually really do like Applegate Farms, the organic line, but regardless, there's always that one hidden ingredient in it that we don't like, right? And in their turkey breast, they have natural flavoring. So I actually, in Puerto Rico, have recently discovered a new brand, and I think they sell this brand at Sprouts, and I know in California they sold it at Mother's. It was the Distal, Diestal, I believe. That brand, they have an organic turkey and chicken breast, and I love it. There's no natural flavoring. I do believe that in some of them, like the honey ones, the honey flavoring ones, there is some organic honey in it, but, avoid it if you're doing keto or trying to stay away from sugar, but it's a very negligible small amount. So I will always wrap that with a little bit of Veganase. You guys will learn, I love Veganase. It's Follow Your Heart, the brand. Of course, there are a few that are made with canola oil, safflower oil, so I use it's the Veganase by Follow Your Heart, and it's the grapeseed oil one. That or the avocado oil one is good too. So I will do that in like a little almond flour tortilla, put a bunch of turkey in it, maybe a couple pieces of lettuce, and I'm serious, like it sits all day in my bag and it's fine, and I'll eat it around dinner time. Another little secret that I'll bring on the airplane is I love cooking before a flight. I eat a lot of steak. So last night I made a huge bone-in ribeye, and if I don't finish it, which typically I don't because they're huge, I will chop it up into tiny little pieces, put it in a glass Tupperware container, and I'll pour a little bit of olive oil and vinegar over it. salt and pepper, and you let it sit overnight in the refrigerator. Now, it's important when you get on the airplane that you make sure there's not enough vinegar sitting at the bottom that they flag your bag for having a liquid, right? So be aware of that. But what I always do is I'll dump the kind of remaining vinegar and oil out before I get on the airplane, or in the kitchen before I leave for the airport. And that's one of my favorite dinners. And it's just basically just meat, of course, and you might pack like some raw cucumbers, right, if you want to bring on the airplane to have something alongside of it. But that aside from the almond flour wrap, is one of my favorite things to bring to the airport, that I have found satisfies me on the airplane. And of course, like I said, I do buy bottled water in the airport if I'm on the airplane, and I do drink that, even though I'm not a big advocate for bottled water in plastic. If you can get glass, it's always better. Plastic is an absolute endocrine disruptor, so it can affect thyroid hormones. It drives inflammation in the body, and especially in women, right? So very important to understand that we don't want to drink bottled water, but of course there's a time and a place when we can make exceptions, and I think traveling is one of those. So there's some things I bring. And then let's talk about, well, what if you ran out the door at 4 o'clock in the morning, which literally happened to me a few weeks ago, and I didn't get a chance to pack a lunch. So I have to give Delta some props here. Their Sky Club is awesome. Now, let's dive in a little bit deeper to this, though, because I've eaten at the Sky Club a few times. I do have their reserve card, so I get to go into their Sky Clubs for free, and I found it to be pretty great recently. In the beginning, I think like a couple years ago, their Sky Clubs did not have good food. It was all cooked in vegetable oil. Just, I wouldn't have been able to eat, right? A lot of kind of cheap bread and crackers and cheap cheese, right? I just don't touch that stuff. But recently, since upgrading and going in recently, really, they've got, like, just the last time I was there, I didn't bring a lunch, and so I went into the Sky Club just to hang out. I had a 5-hour layover, and they had organic local greens, like the prettiest green lettuce that I've seen in a while, like even close in the vicinity of an airport. And I was able to make myself, granted it was not 100% organic, right? Was the tomatoes, the chopped tomatoes, or the Parmesan 100% organic? No, probably not, right? But remember, good, better, best. You always want to, at least, number one rule, if you can't get all organic, at least make sure that you are eating vegetable oil-free foods. That is my absolute number one rule, right? And always make sure you bring your ion, because you can take this product before a meal that you're not quite sure is organic. So I always have my ion in a little portable plastic, or glass is fine too, dark bottle in my purse, literally. Thank goodness my purse is large enough that I can bring all of these things. So I do take ion before I eat something I'm not sure is organic. Restaurant-wise, airport, even at home, right? My Siete is a perfect example that I make sure I take my ion before. So anyway, back to Sky Club. It was fun because there was actually something I could eat. Now, I always ask questions. I always walk up to the Delta manager and I say, hey, I'm allergic to vegetable and canola oil. There it is. I just said it. That is what I say. I do say I am allergic. We are allergic. I am absolutely allergic to canola and vegetable oil. In fact, I've eaten it, not even on purpose, and I have broken out. I do have definitely sensitivity to it. So I do tell people I'm allergic, because if you tell them, oh, I'm just trying to avoid it, no one's going to take you seriously. That's just the truth in today's world, unfortunately, right? And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to educate and to teach people the truth, right? If we don't talk about it, no one's going to know, right? Eventually, hopefully one day, people will take it seriously. I know Whole Foods is. Whole Foods, even though I've shopped there for years, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, these rancid seed oils have been in everything, even their pre-made foods, like their soups, which by the way are delicious. But over the past year, I've noticed 365 has changed a lot of those seed oils. They're cooking now with extra virgin olive oil. So it's interesting. Even Whole Foods has listened to this movement of, look, we're removing these toxic seed oils that are so toxic to the cell membrane. We're going to dive into the cell membrane and the importance of avoiding this oil on a different call. But to stay to our topic, it is important to always make sure we avoid canola and vegetable oil. So I always ask questions. I do tell people I'm extremely sensitive. What can I eat here? And they'll always come back and they'll say, they always have these like potatoes, right, cooked in olive oil only, and they always point me in that direction. And then, of course, they say you can make a salad, but their salad dressings always have vegetable oil. So they always have to put out extra virgin olive oil and some type of vinegar, just pure vinegar. There's no oil in it. Also, whenever someone puts olive oil in front of you and there's no label, you always need to verify, hey, can you please ask your chef, is this mixed or is it pure extra virgin olive oil? If it's mixed, most likely it's mixed with canola oil. It's just because real olive oil is expensive. We know that, right? And so they will try to mix it with some of these cheaper oils like canola, safflower, sunflower oils. And of course, we want to avoid those, so mixed would not work in our criteria. So make sure, even though they put olive oil in front of you, again, people are not educated like we are sitting here doing. So you gotta continue to ask questions, right? I am a oil Nazi for sure. So I made myself a salad and it was actually really great. So, if you ever do get in a predicament where you can't eat anywhere in the airport, because I've tried, like even in some of the nicest airports, they still cook with vegetable oil everywhere, in every restaurant, even Chipotle, right, which uses non-GMO ingredients, right? I would never eat a Chipotle again. So point being, if you ever get in that predicament, Delta Sky Club might have something you could eat. All right. Well, what about whenever we get where we're going? What is some of the things that we talk about when we're at restaurants, right? So imagine, you eat your meal on the plane at 7:00, right? You land at 10, or maybe you had a meal at Delta Sky Club or somewhere in the airport that was healthy enough. You get to where you're going and, you spend the night in a hotel. You wake up the next morning. Okay, well, I really want a cup of coffee now, right? If I go on a long stay somewhere like vacation, Tulum is the perfect example. They just I don't like Mexican coffee, not much. And, I'm sorry if I'm offending someone here, but I have never enjoyed a cup of Mexican coffee. So when I go on vacation for a week or 2 weeks, I actually bring my own coffee, organic, shade-grown coffee, tested for mycotoxins. That's an example is mold. So I actually do bring my coffee. But if you're going for a short weekend trip or just a few days, you're not going to bring your own coffee, right? You're trying to pack light. So, of course, I always like to stay in nicer hotels that can accommodate you and make sure you're not in a moldy hotel room. That's super important. So usually these places are serving better coffee. Is it going to be 100% organic? Most likely not. If you're staying in a place like California, you might be able to drive and get a great organic cup of coffee at an organic cafe shop. But again, we're here to talk about when these things are not possible, right? So again, try to pick your best option. If you have a couple different options, avoid Starbucks at every cost, right? There's a lot of excitotoxins in Starbucks coffee, and I would definitely avoid it. So best option you can do, and again, take your eye on before you have your coffee. That's always a fantastic tool to have. I'm going to keep talking about that, especially when we're traveling. So cup of coffee, and I don't use dairy. I actually am a big advocate for dairy as a superfood in some situations where people can tolerate it. I do understand that some people have a serious allergy to dairy because it's been changed and it's been turned rancid for the past 100 years. So I do understand that. But in my case, I'm not sensitive to dairy, but I do not use it ever if it's not grass-fed, at least grass-fed. I prefer raw dairy, always the way God intended it to be. Man did not change it. 100% grass-fed, grass-finished is super important, and raw. But of course, no coffee shop is ever going to have that. So do your best. If they don't have some type of natural or grass-fed dairy at this coffee place I'm at, typically I'll just drink it black. I always have stevia, liquid stevia, organic stevia from Whole Foods is my favorite, just FYI. I always have that in my purse too. So stevia is also something I bring in my purse when I travel. So stevia, and I will drink it black if they don't have a creamer that I think is healthy enough. Now, what about plant-based creamers? I'm not against plant-based creamers. I just hate that they put canola oil in like half of them. And there's all these gums, all these fillers, right, in these almond milks. So of course, when I'm home, I make my own almond milk. I actually love almond milk, and Elmhurst is my favorite brand. Also Malk for some of these nut milks that don't have gums. It's just nuts and water. my favorite. So when you're home, that's a great brand. But when you're traveling, they're not going to have these. They're going to have the Kirkland brand. They're going to have the Oatly, I believe, is the oat milk that has canola oil. There's quite a few. The soy brand, no, that's a candy bar. There's so many brands. I would just avoid the nut milks altogether unless you see that they're using like a really good organic, a brand that you know that doesn't have a ton of different fillers, a million ingredients, right? Just nuts and water is what we're looking for. So typically when I'm traveling, I have to admit my coffee is the best I can find wherever I'm at. I do take my ion before, and I usually drink it black with just stevia in it because it's very difficult to find like good milk, you know? If you get lucky and there's like a good organic almond milk in their refrigerator, I would use that, definitely. Okay, well, what about lunch, right? Typically, again, I'm a faster, so I do skip breakfast. I do typically even skip lunch, and I do 1 meal a day, even if I'm traveling. I just find it to be, you know, when you're traveling, you're busy, and it's easy to fast. If you're staying busy, you can fast more. But lunch and dinner, let's say I'm eating lunch and dinner at 1 o'clock, and then dinner maybe at 7. I'm going to eat out, of course, right? Even though I'm a doctor and a health coach, I still eat out. In fact, when I travel, I take eating out at restaurants as an opportunity to eat higher carb and to explore new foods, right? Just because I eat healthy, I'm an advocate for healthy food and healthy lifestyle living, I still enjoy really good meals, right? So again, we have to remember my number one rule is avoid canola, vegetable, seed, rancid seed oils at all costs. So of course, if you eat out at a restaurant in the middle of nowhere, I don't know a really great example, but you know, let's say here, Puerto Rico, do we have organic restaurants? No. If there is any, they're in San Juan, and which is the capital of this little island, and they're vegan restaurants. But you guys know I don't love vegan restaurants, so I am a big protein meat eater. So, you know, I definitely would eat at the best restaurant I could find. Typically, I'm reaching for Italian or Mediterranean or Greek restaurants because they always have olive oil available in their kitchen. If they're more authentic Italian or Greek food, they're definitely cooking with only olive oil. They're pretty against seed oils, which is pretty great. So I do tend to gravitate more towards Italian food when I'm traveling and Greek food, just for that reason. If not, if it's any restaurant in general, I will walk in and I always make sure I call ahead, typically, to make sure that they can accommodate my allergy, which is no vegetable and canola oil. And typically what they'll do is the chef will come out, or the waitress who has talked to the chef, and they'll tell me exactly what I can order off of the menu. Let's just give a great example. I was home, or not home, I was in Atlanta, which used to be my home. Not long ago for my graduation, my parents were there, and we went to this restaurant called Rumi's Kitchen. Rumi's Kitchen is a Persian restaurant, but they cook everything in vegetable oil, canola oil, vegetable oil. But I love Rumi's. It's so fun to go there. Their atmosphere is great. They have really good drinks, really great wine. And so we went to dinner there one night, and of course, my family and I tell the waiter, hey, we're allergic to vegetable oil. What can we have? They're very accommodating. They bring back the menu literally that the chef had highlighted the foods that they could cook without vegetable oil in either butter or olive oil. And I love that. I love when restaurants bring me a menu and say, look, I get you have an allergy. I understand how you feel. Here is what you can have when you're here with us today, right? So that's why I really like to call ahead at certain restaurants for lunch, for dinner, to make sure that they can accommodate. Because one of the worst things is walking into a restaurant, telling them that you're allergic to something, and then they say, I'm sorry, everything's cooked in this, and then you have to leave, right? At least I would, right? So definitely try to call ahead, especially if you're going to be with a group of people. You don't really want to make a scene, and you just want to have a good time. That's why you're going there, to spend money and to eat in an atmosphere and to eat good food and to try new things, right? But so calling ahead is helpful, explaining that, you know, butter, real butter, I think that's super important. Here in Puerto Rico, they've got margarine in the kitchens and they think it's real butter. Again, it's okay. It's just we have to continue to educate. You know, not everyone understands that butter is from a cow and it's hopefully raw and grass fed, right? So we have to educate these things. And again, that's what I'm here for. But real butter. So real butter and extra virgin olive oil. And if they can accommodate you, you're going to have a great dinner. Granted, you might not be able to eat 100% organic. Again, that's okay. That's why I always make sure I have my ion on hand before dinner. And of course, let's talk about alcohol. When I was in my deepest health journey, I was fasting a lot. I was detoxing a lot. I was very, very strict. I didn't drink. And if I ever did drink, I did okay with it. Surprisingly, most neurotoxic people can't drink alcohol. I would do fine with it, but I was very adamant about never touching sugar. And so I did typically like a really clean tequila in just soda water and lime. So, when I was definitely keto, I was trying to avoid sugar. That's what I did. Now I can definitely do higher, I don't want to say high sugar, but I can allow myself to have higher carb days when I'm traveling. And I typically will have some type of cocktail. I always do ask it to be more on the skinnier side or less sugar just because I'm more drawn to the lower carb lifestyle, I think. But, I definitely do enjoy a drink or two on occasion when we're out at restaurants traveling. So, but I definitely lean more towards the better tequilas. Tequila is absolutely the cleaner alcohol. Rum is just sugar. It's very sugary. So I don't drink a lot of rum, sometimes vodka. But again, I'm always reaching for the better brands that are just a lot cleaner. Okay. So, that's that. And then, but if you are someone that really doesn't do well with sugar and you're trying to stay away from sugar, I love just a good tequila or a mezcal in sparkling water with just lime. Lots of really good fresh lime. That's a great drink, right? You could even put a few drops of organic stevia that you have in your purse, right, in it if you want to add just a tiny touch of sweetness. Another thing, sometimes some restaurants will have kombucha, like homemade kombucha. If you're like a health food restaurant, you could do tequila and kombucha. That's always one of my other favorite drinks I make at home sometimes. But anyway, so no vegetable oil, no canola oil. That is an absolute must. That is our rule. And then dinner time, same thing. I always like to call ahead, kind of reaching more towards the Italian, the Greek food, because they've got olive oil. They're definitely probably marinating things in olive oil, so it's better. So that is a good thing to start to understand. Okay. So what else? Let's see here. When I travel, we talked about milk. We talked about avoiding canola vegetable oil. It is okay to enjoy foods you've never had before, things you don't commonly eat, right? So one of my favorite things to talk about is diet rotation. It's okay to change your diet every so once in a while, right? When I'm home, I work at my desk, I coach clients, and I am fasting all the time, right? So then the weekend comes around and I tend to cook more. I go to the farmer's market. I definitely eat more often. So we have this idea of lots of famine and fasting. And then the weekend comes around and I definitely eat more. I definitely eat higher carb. Maybe I have time to make sweet potato fries or make some almond flour cookies with maple syrup. It's good to have this variation in our diet where we go times of lots of famine and lots of times of feast. It's very important to have a good balance. And I think a lot of people on this health journey, especially in my generation, when I say my generation, to be clear, going forward, we're talking 20, 30-year-olds, even 18-year-olds, right? This is the generation that needs to learn how to biohack their health now. It is important because we're seeing an epidemic of health conditions that, 100 years ago were happening in 70-year-olds. Now they're happening in 15-year-olds, right? Perfect example is one of our newest family members. She, had autoimmune disease at a very young age. And thankfully, through working with my father, Dr. Papa, was able to get her life back. But it's important to discuss that my generation is not well. And, I wasn't well. I had to get my health back. But because of my father, he was able to look at me and go, Olivia, that symptom isn't normal. You think it is because everyone else around you has it, right? ADD, or this inability to focus, or brain fog, lack of motivation. Okay, but Olivia, that's not normal, right? You should be able to adapt as a young human being and actually get stronger as you get older, but you're not. You're getting sicker every year. And these symptoms that you have, well, everyone else around you in college has it, so it's normal, right? But that's not correct. We want to expose these problems, right? So learning how to live a non-toxic lifestyle is always going to be not only getting yourself well, but preventative health. Of course, to bring awareness to my generation, why we're avoiding canola vegetable oil, especially when we travel, right? And it's okay to feast and famine. Like I was saying, I feel that one of the worst things that's happening in my generation right now is that we try to go on these diets and we eat this certain way. We restrict carbohydrates so much for too long. And we almost become afraid of feasting. By the way, I don't call it cheat days, ever. I don't believe in cheat days. Really, it's feasting. It's giving your body glycogen. It's giving your body a glucose that it's been away from for a while when you've been through a lot of fasting, maybe a lot of ketosis work, low carb work, right? So we have famine, then we have feast, and we want both. And I feel that my generation, and this is one of the biggest things I want to discuss, is we're afraid of carbs. We're afraid of sugar, right? But we shouldn't be. I think there's times of healing where we need to remove it, but we need to remember when to add it back in. So super important to understand that. And again, to close, I want to emphasize the importance of staying away from canola oil, vegetable oil, whenever we travel. And this will always make a difference in your health. Also, just kind of the way you live your life every day, right? Avoiding the things that we are just training ourselves to be good at identifying and staying away from, to leave a lasting impact on our cell membranes, right? I was kind of touching on it. You know, canola vegetable oil, just one meal of it can affect your cell membranes for over 200 days. That's crazy. That's almost like a year, right? So that is why we wanted to talk about today, how to stay healthy when we are traveling. And I'm super excited to be starting this podcast with you guys. Thanks for tuning in to my first, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you. Bye.